I'm Zoe Irvine, and I'm joined by Lex and Ambrose, and they are running for the LGBTQ plus offices. So my first question is, so you two are running as a group. Have you thought about what challenges that may arise and how you deal with those?
So thanks very much.
I think one of the main challenges will, of course, be like coordination. But I think we'll deal with it pretty well because we see each other regularly anyway, because we're really close friends. So I don't think it will be that much of a challenge, but more like kind of an enhancement almost, because I think we complement each other pretty well.
I think that we also will be able to like delegate different roles as well as like because my main interest personally is more of like the admin stuff, like the self-ID services, like coordinating stuff with that, like stuff that like doesn't necessarily involve events, but involves like active action. Whereas I think Lex is like very much more tailored towards like being like a voice for the people.
And your manifesto speaks a lot about education, and so what topics do you think are most important and critical that you'd like to focus on, should you win this role?
I think that definitely like the most important things that we are lacking right now in terms of LGBTQ plus education is definitely consent and sex ed. Those are two very important points where like of course we have like consent talks and stuff like that. They don't really go into the intricacies of what it means to give consent as an LGBT person. The same with sex ed. Like we understand about like we all know about the free condoms and stuff like that, but like we aren't told anything about anything else that might be used for like people with different like genitals and whatnot.
I think it's also really important to address people who might not be as educated in themselves, like addressing allies directly, because I think there's a big thing of like people are expected just to know things, whereas that is quite difficult because obviously if you go on the internet you can find a lot of information, but you might also slip into a hole of like turf rhetoric, or even worse, like that you get like more right leaning than you were before. So like we really want to educate people like first hand, that they get like people that are like self-ID as LGBT to talk about it.
And your final pledge states to create the most supportive, intersectional and inclusive community possible. And so how do you plan on achieving that?
I think the main problem, like whenever we think about LGBT rights in themselves, is that we kind of view it as a vacuum. So we don't really consider the intersectionality, so like kind of like what it means to be black and LGBT, what it means to be an international student and LGBT. So we really want to have support specifically for those groups of people, especially trans people in those groups, like disabled, POC, international, who may find it the most difficult to have their LGBT experience like at university.
I think we can really help with it because we personally have experienced a lot of this. Obviously, like Ambrose is a person of colour. I am also disabled, which means that like we have a lot of experience that can help us really focus on issues that personally affect like the intersectionality of it all.
And so, yeah, we're coming towards the end of this interview. And so thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with your election, of course. And we're going to be handing over to Studio Red for our next interview, which I think is for the role of women and non-binary officer.